My life has become boring. I'm not depressed or anything. I don't hate existing. I don't wish I was anybody else. In fact, I have a pretty good life. But each day, I wake up, do college stuff, and go to work. When I finally get home, I spend the rest of my evening relaxing, just before I go to sleep and do the same thing again the next day. And the next. And the next. It's like I'm just waiting for something to happen, but nothing ever does. The sky lost its color, the music faded out, and it's just so dull. In a way, you could say everything's just so melancholic. Melancholy can simply be defined as a, quote, gloomy state of mind, typically with no cause. I feel like it's very common for people like me to long for more. I'm just at that part in my life where I'm too old to cling to my high school self, but I'm too young to go on with my life. I recently was looking for an anime to kill some time when I re-stumbled across the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. This was a show I'd always heard about, I just never got around to finally watching it. I figured, what better time than ever? That being said, I hit play and got myself deep into the show, and little did I know how big of an impact a single show could have on me. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya follows a girl named, you guessed it, Haruhi Suzumiya. We get to take a look at her life as she deals with boredom and the mundane aspects of everyday school life. The real main character, Kyon, acts as a window in which we get to see her. In the very first episode, we see Kyon walking to school while inner monologuing. He goes on a rant about how he never believed in Santa, or aliens, time travelers, espers, or even those anime manga action heroes. But he wished they were real. But unfortunately, life can be a harsh reality. The whole time we see this, a weird dark gradient is placed over the screen. Everything's rather dull. In the classroom, we see the class doing introductions as Kyon says everything changed as soon as he met her. Haruhi stands up and exclaims, I am Haruhi, and I am not interested in normal people, but if you are an alien, time traveler, or esper, come see me. Just then, Kyon turns around to look at the total weirdo who just said all of this in front of the class, and as soon as he does, the color palette changes, finally getting rid of that dull, grainy texture and bringing forth a colorful and bright atmosphere. This is where the adventure would start. In class, Haruhi's complaining to Kyon about being bored when he suggests that she should make a club.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
And just like that, Haruhi grabbed him and forced him to go along with that idea. Of course, the club would need more members. But it would be way too easy if the members of the club just so happened to be an alien, time traveler, and an esper, right? Right? Yeah, the show does just that. So now we have supernatural beings revealing themselves to Kyon, but they have to keep it a secret from Haruhi. Why, you may ask? Because Haruhi is a god who can create or do anything she wills, but she's oblivious to it the entire time. Duh. Okay, so yeah, Haruhi has godlike powers, and if there's something that she wants, she gets it. Pigeons turning white? Yup. Talking cats? Yup. A literal world where nobody exists except Kyon and Haruhi while they run around trying to not be killed by giant emotion monsters? Yup. So we finally find out the reasons now why the alien, time traveler, and esper came to be around Haruhi. They're all sent to observe her and keep her at bay because if she gets too bored, she may, just maybe, might, quite possibly, destroy the universe. I know that's bad. So, the gang goes on small adventures as the SOS Brigade in an attempt to keep Haruhi happy. And thus, the premise of the show. One of my favorite things about the show is definitely the characters. They all feel unique and real. We've already established Haruhi and her eccentric personality mixed with her godlike powers, but I want to take a moment to talk about the rest of the cast. Kyon is technically the real main character of the show, and personally my favorite. He has a very cynical personality, which I can relate to in myself. His outsider perspective is very fun to watch, as he's the only one in the group who doesn't have any powers. In a way, it's kind of like Kyon resembles the viewer. Overall, Kyon gets dragged around by Haruhi non-stop, and it seems like he gets really tired of her antics. If that's really the case, well, we'll talk more about that later. Mikuru Asahina is a time traveler. She's the shy, cute group member, and she wasn't always my favorite, but she did serve some really good purposes in the show. Unfortunately, she is often being seriously harassed by Haruhi and her infamous bunny suits. But hey, it was 2006. They get a pass. That's just how it was. Itsuki Koizumi is an esper, and also one of my favorites. He was actually one of the least involved on screen, but I still really liked him. If Haruhi was going to reset the universe, it would open up this thing called closed space, and then Koizumi and his organization would have to go and clean things up. You could argue that other than Kyon, Koizumi helps keep Haruhi at bay the most. Finally, Yuki Nagato is a weird alien android computer person thingy. Nagato's sort of the MVP when it comes to getting the gang out of trouble. Since she's like a computer thing in a way, she's really good at calculating ways to save the universe or something bizarre. It appears like she's emotionless most of the time, but Nagato's always so hellbent on helping the group instead of doing anything for herself. She plays a much bigger role in the movie that is definitely worth checking out, a lot more than we're going to talk in this video especially. But yeah, that's the characters. I really just love how unique they all are, and their personalities make the show feel so alive and vibrant. At one point in the show, Haruhi goes on a short monologue about baseball and being insignificant. In fact, I'm dedicating a whole section of this video to it because it highlights the key essence of Haruhi's character and, quite honestly, the whole message of the series. Right when Kyon asks if he can go home after another long day of antics, Haruhi simply replies, "Have you ever realized how insignificant your existence is on this planet?" At this moment, my interest was piqued. This was that feeling I was trying so hard to convey in my own life. This was how those long, repetitive days had me feeling. Haruhi continues to explain how in 6th grade, her whole family went to a baseball game. She was never particularly interested in baseball, but when she got there, she felt something she'd never forget. There were people everywhere, too many to even count. The people on the other side of the stadium looked like squirming grains of rice, all packed together. Haruhi goes so far as to feel like every person in Japan was at that game. Haruhi asked her dad how many people were there, to which he replied that the stadium could hold 50,000. As the fans left the stadium, the sight was stunning. So many people moving like a river all around Haruhi. And yet this is only a small fraction of the population of Japan. This isn't even to mention the rest of the world. When Haruhi got home, she grabbed her calculator to finally purge her curiosity. The population of Japan, according to her social studies class, was around 100 million. This means 1/2000th of the population of Japan was at that game. 1/2000th! She says, not only was I one little person in that sea of people at the stadium, but that sea of people was merely a drop in the ocean. Haruhi suddenly crashes down to earth. She thought she was special. All of the special things she thought she was doing with her family and her friends at school, those things could be found all across Japan. To Haruhi, the world began to lose its color as she began to accept this logic. Brush my teeth and go to sleep at night. Wake up and eat breakfast in the morning. People do those everywhere. Haruhi knew that someone in the world had to be the most interesting, but why couldn't it have been her? It was then that she realized nothing fun would happen if she just sat around waiting. So she tried to reinvent herself. She was no longer a girl content with sitting around and waiting. But in the end, Haruhi claims nothing ever ended up happening. What I love about this monologue is the real and melancholic tone it creates. Haruhi isn't wrong. She can't sit around and wait for something fun to happen. That isn't how the world works. If you stop texting your friends for so long, they probably won't write you back. If you stop going to that club, they'll probably stop inviting you. You as an individual have to make yourself stand out in a world full of people all trying to do the same thing. This is why Haruhi makes the SOS Brigade do all these silly things like make a movie, enter a baseball tournament, or a cicada catching contest. They all seem like such trivial events, but to Haruhi, they meant everything. This monologue resonates with me so deeply, it just captivates every emotion I've been feeling for so long. Maybe I am just 1 in 8 billion people on this earth, but gosh darn it, I can make my life fulfilling. And even if I fail, I can still say I tried my hardest. It wouldn't be a Haruhi video if I didn't talk about one of the most iconic, yet infamous, arcs in all of anime. No, I'm not talking about Return to Shinganshina, or Shibuya, or the Chimera Ant arc. I'm talking about the Endless Eight. Basically, the Endless Eight is an arc where Haruhi and the gang want to make the most out of their summer vacation. This included, but not limited to, the gang going to the pool, a cicada catching contest, fireworks, and a part-time job. All of this is done to make sure they didn't miss anything that they wanted to do. However, we eventually become aware that they're stuck in a time loop, and they've done all of these things already. But as soon as their short break is over and the clock hits midnight, they return back to the start of summer with no knowledge of their previous attempt. Now, why would I mention that this arc is the most infamous? Because they aired the exact same episode 8 freaking times. You watch the episode, they do their stuff. Halfway through, the gang becomes self-aware because Nagato can store information, because, like Android. And they live the last bit of time aware that they will restart with no knowledge of how to get out of the time warp. Weekly watchers would get through this, then wait an entire week to watch the exact same episode 8 times. Now, a little side note, the voice cast did re-record all the lines, so it had some individuality, but, come on, it's the same episode. Also, the art was redrawn through each time, like some different angles for each shot, but yeah. There was some effort, but the settings, actions, and plot are pretty much the same for the most part. Now, what importance does this play into the show and the overall theme? Well, I think you would go crazy if you relived the same summer vacation 15,532 times. Yes, it was that much. Nagato reminds us each time. Because she can store data, she didn't get her memory wiped each time, which does make me wonder why she didn't try and do anything else. That means that she lived every single attempt. I think it comes out to 590 something years. To be completely alone reliving the same thing like that had to have been extremely hard. In fact, when they're at the pool each episode, Kyon constantly notices that Nagato's rather sad, but he can never figure out why. In a way, it's kind of like my own life. The same thing, over and over again, as each week goes by. In the end, the gang figures out one thing they can do to break out of the time loop, and finally, the time continues. I won't spoil what it was, but when they finally do it, it's rewarding. Somehow, it kind of felt like we were the ones in the time loop. I'm sure that everyone watching the same episode 8 times felt like they were in a time loop. So when it's finally over, it feels like we broke out of it too. When I compare it to my own life, it makes me feel like I too need to keep trying to find a way to break out of this repetitive cycle. The morning of December 16. It was so cold. This is how the best anime movie opens. Kyon wakes up in a freezing Japan as winter break is on the horizon. As he arrives to school, the SOS Brigade is beginning their preparations for a club Christmas party. Kyon is, of course, getting a headache from all of it. After all, Haruhi is such a nuisance to his peaceful life. A few days later, Kyon arrives at school, but this time something's off. Haruhi isn't there. In fact, her existence seems to be non-existent. This is a world where aliens, time travelers, and espers don't exist. The club never existed. All that was left was Kyon and his memory of the world he came from. The rest of the gang doesn't remember anything because this time, they're all just normal people. Kyon gets word of a Haruhi from a different school, so he rushes to check it out. When he gets there, he meets Haruhi, but this time she seems different. Kyon gets everyone gathered together in the club room and explains everything. Through the computer, the original Nagato communicates with Kyon about a program that can return him to the real world. Keep in mind, this is about a quarter into the movie and a lot happens after this. I just don't want to get into every detail because that's not really what this section's about, and I want you to experience this masterpiece for yourself. At the end of the movie lies one of the best scenes in possibly anime history. Kyon, again, has an inner monologue about what he truly wants. He goes back and forth with himself trying to figure out what he should really do. He could go back to the world where everything's crazy and Haruhi gives him constant headaches, or he can accept this new world where everything's kind of normal. Kyon understands how Haruhi is a pain in the ass. She's bossy, rude, and sometimes just flat out annoying. Not to mention, he lives in a supernatural world where nothing is ordinary. But as Kyon fights with himself, he realizes that the world he despises so much was actually a lot of fun. He never felt bored in this world with Haruhi. Aliens, time travelers, and espers were real. Deep down, Kyon knew this was a world that his younger self would be ecstatic to be a part of. As much as a normal life would be peaceful, Kyon couldn't turn down an exciting life full of adventure. He chooses to return to the world with Haruhi and the others because he can't trade these precious times for anything. This is the essence of the entire series. Kyon is proving the point that excitement and making the most out of everything is truly the best outlook on life. The same thing Haruhi wanted all along. And just like myself, I too long for a world where we can break free of the endless cycle, the mundane, melancholic life I've grown accustomed to. We can be excited and happy about the adventures we're going to go on. Life doesn't have to be such a melancholy. It's okay for us to want a world with aliens, time travelers, and espers. We can pick a world where anything's possible. All we have to do is choose it.